Are there any questions that have come
We
in?
have a direct message. That means Sonia didn't see that one.
Oh, okay. Diane says she's kept some hellebore seedlings in the house over the winter. Want to move them outside. How should I prepare them? Well, first off, Diane and everyone else who's listening, don't send direct to Janet and Steve because we are looking at our pictures and waving our arms around and not watching the chat. But our moderator, daughter, Sonia Nicola, is watching the chat. So send to everyone. If you've got anything that's in the house and then growing inside in the warm, the cells are full of water. They are literally full of water. They're cooking like it's summertime. And if you put those outside, they're likely to burst the cells and freeze. So what we do is they call it hardening off. Put them out during the day, these seedlings, put them out during the day for a week, set them out during the day, maybe morning time for a couple hours, and then for half the day, but not overnight, because they will readjust the water content in their cells to be hardy, and hellebore seedlings should be just fine. I like to save those hellebore seedlings too. They mostly all come up being, one color or facing down,
but you never know.
yeah, sometimes you get some wonderful things with them. But anything that's growing inside, including the stuff that you order and it comes started, it probably was in a greenhouse. It's not ready to go straight outside. They need to be field grown to be outside. So harden things off this time of year by putting them out for 4 or 5, 6 days, a little at a time during the day until the plant can adjust.
All right, we also have a question from Mark who says, using your crystal ball, do you think this latest cold snap will affect the dogwood? This is a Venus from blooming.
Oh my gosh, hang on, Mark, because we checked that exactly on, not on Venus, one of the other hybrid dogwoods. Yeah, we've got some pictures coming up. Yeah, I think they're going to be okay.
Excellent. Nancy is curious about the winter weed that has blue flowers. Any thought on that?
I think it's creeping speedwell that you're looking at, because that's the main one.
That was the one that I took the picture of.
Yeah, Veronica repens, and there's actually a couple of kinds of Veronica. There's one with a longer, slightly hairier leaf, and they have blue flowers on them, but it's a Veronica, a speedwell. And believe it or not, if you're a rock gardener, there's a couple of those that they have varieties of that. We have one of them growing in our garden.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, so
it's pretty.
Michelle says she needs to cut down a Limelight hydrangea from deer damage. It's at least 15 years old. Will it be worth it to cut it down, or should I get a new kind?
Oh, no, definitely. You can cut Limelight all the way down to the ground and it'll just come back up. I've cut Limelights down to stubs for years and they come back up. Yeah, the deer do like them, especially in the year when they're browsing close to your house. They'll aim for the hydrangeas, but they'll come back. Let's see, how big does Limelight get in 1 year? Let's see. That was at Karen's house. Yeah, 3 feet easy. So you're going to get 3 feet of growth out of it if it's in a good place.
Yep. All right. Audrey says, I need to move some trees. If I start root pruning now, when can I move them? And actually, Jean Kessler is asking about moving blueberry bushes.
Okay, if you're going to move a woody plant and it's been in the ground for more than a couple of years, root pruning is a good thing to do. And we generally, if we're going to root prune, we root prune at least one cool season before we move. So we'll root prune in the spring, and then we'll move when the weather breaks in the summertime, sometime in the fall. So we'll be moving at the end of August, the beginning of September into October. If it's really precious and been in the ground a long time, we'll root prune in the spring and then again in the fall and move it the next spring. But we always look, because quite often when I go to root prune, I'm sticking the spade in the ground and I'm digging a trench around. I'm not just sticking the spade in the ground, I'm digging a trench because I want to make sure that I sever the roots and have a trench that I can put loose soil into so that the root ends that I've left cut can branch out into good soil. When I dig this trench, if I don't find any roots, I keep going back toward the plant because sometimes the roots have not rooted out.
They have not gone as far as you expect.
And sometimes I can move it right away. There are pictures in, I have to think of which issue it is, but move a shrub. And if you put in, what shrub, what's the name of that shrub that I moved around to the backside? Calycanthus, no, yeah, sweet shrub. Move a sweet shrub. If you put move sweet shrub into our search field, you'll find an article where I show you pictures of moving one right away because we were able to take all of the roots right away. So either one cool season before, 2 cool seasons before for a better chance, and maybe right away. And
So Nancy says that she started root pruning in the fall for a dwarf Alberta spruce, so it can move now in the spring.
oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
and dwarf Alberta spruces are wonderful. They have very dense, short roots, just like they have dense, short branches. We've remember Mark Koski's dwarf Alberta spruce? We just yanked it up and moved it right away and said maybe it'll make it, and they make it. So yeah, dwarf Alberta spruces should be just fine.
Yeah.
Steve
So then,
has a theory that maybe dwarf Alberta spruces are dwarf because their roots are always tangled around each other.
so to Jean's question then about needing to move some blueberry bushes and what should be done to be successful, would that be a root pruning case, or what would be your advice for blueberry?
I bet on the blueberries. My bet on the blueberries is you're going to be able to dig those up right away because they haven't rooted out. We don't have great growing conditions in Southeast Michigan for blueberries. We don't have acid soil. So I think you're going to be able to move those right away. If it's a big bush that's been there a long time, yeah, you root prune it. And what are you going to find? Kind of reddish roots they're a bit stringy. You should, if you trench around it to root prune, you should find some kind of reddish, red to caramel colored, shiny roots. And they'll probably be, the biggest ones will probably be as big around as your finger. And as long as you cut those clean, you could move it right away.
Next, we have Gwyn is asking about, do you recommend vendors who sell bee-safe plants? If they are not, does cutting off all of the blooms work to keep them bee-safe? And this could be a Michelle question as much as a Janet Steve question.
Yeah, or a Paul question
yeah.
when we talked about pollinators and had Paul Kozak on to talk about it. There is some indication that the pesticides that are put on plants that are a problem for bees, the neonicotinoids. These are chemicals based on nicotine, neonicotinoids. Oid means like, but it's not nicotine.
Yep.
And they confuse the bees, if not kill them. Even if they don't kill them, the bees get lost. They forget where they're going. They're sickly, and those are in the flower, certainly, and in the pollen. So that's a problem for bees. But they seem to be in the plant, and if they're in the plant, then the new flowers that come out for a while still have them in there. So what you want plants that have not been treated with neonicotinoids. And do I recommend them? Yes, if you can find them.
It's hard.
For instance, we go to Bogey Lake Greenhouse and they grew all those plants themselves. So we can ask them what has been put into this plant. There's some indication that those neonicotinoids might last more than a year. There's a bunch of controversy about this at the conference that I was at last week. The naturalist said, a year for sure they're in there, and after that they're not. So I'd recommend that if you're growing pollinators that you do that. Cutting the flowers off may or may not help. I think paying attention is all that we can do.
That's
All right. Janet says her hellebores flowers were up and last week's freeze made them all lay down. Will they survive?
Probably. Yeah, probably. They laid down because they quickly pulled water out of their stems. I mean, they responded very well to cold. And because hellebores are good at doing this, I mean, they immediately pulled water out of the stems and laid down. And now they're closer to the ground. They'll probably stand back up. It takes a very, very hard cold to make those stems stay down. Daffodils did the same thing. Remember the tulips that you took a picture of?
Yeah.
Laying down on the ground, and the next day they're standing back up again. So they should be okay.
Right. Luann says she has some ugly looking boxwoods. Can you cut those down to the ground?
You can. If they're healthy, they'll sprout from bare wood. If they're not healthy, they won't sprout from bare wood, and all you've lost is an ugly boxwood. So go ahead and cut them down. And then give them until 1st of June to show you how much they're going to sprout.
Yeah. And similarly, Maria says, how far can you cut down Rose of Sharon and still have them bloom this year?
Rose of Sharon, it can go all the way to the ground like a butterfly bush and it'll still bloom. It'll bloom if you cut them all the way down to the ground or cut them down below the buds that they've set for this year. They're going to bloom 2 or 3 weeks later than other Rose of Sharons, which is nice for us.
I kind of like that.
We like pushing them off a little bit. If it's a healthy Rose of Sharon, it'll be 3-4 feet tall in 1 year from being cut down to the ground.
Okay. And then I think the last one for this round, Mary Ellen says she was given a couple of black currant bushes. Not sure I should plant these, as what I have read is that they're invasive and need a permit to plant. There are some of my neighbors down in the ward here in Guelph that are probably in big trouble then, because there are black currant bushes kind of all over where I am.
Black currant can run a long way. I've pulled up black currant roots that made me feel like I was pulling up bamboo. But the currants are a permit to grow is because currant is a alternate host for wheat rust. And so in most places,
Many areas.
yeah, most places as they consolidated and became villages or cities, they took the laws from other established cities and said, okay, we'll just adopt these. And because most places had wheat farmers in this area, they didn't want you to plant currants. So are they're a problem for being invasive? Yes, but that's not why you need a permit to plant them. They need the permit because if you're next to a wheat field, that's not a good thing to have there.
All right, and I think that'll do it for this round.